Hello. I apologize in advance that this is a selfie video on my cell phone. I'm 40 years old. I should be not doing this anymore. But I just recorded a previous video and the sound was so bad that I promised you this video, but I could not in good conscience re-record on that same device. So I will be buying myself a microphone so that you do not dread my communication because it sounds so bad. All right, let's talk about the 5 C's of Young Life. That is their key elements that makes this approach to youth ministry fundamentally different than the traditional youth group. And in the communication that I'll be doing in the weeks to come, I'll break these out a little bit better. But there are 5 key elements that if you leave any one of the 5 of these out, Young Life is not that different from a youth group. But when you put the 5 together, it makes a complete 360 approach to actually touching students, reaching students, and seeing life transformation happen and long-time bonds. When I was first researching this thing, I went all over to anybody that I knew that had heard of Young Life before or had any personal experience with it. And I could not believe how many people knew were still in touch with their Young Life leader some 40 years after graduation. So, it seems powerful and effective. And also, all of those people were still active in their faith. So that's also, hello, that's what we're looking for. Okay, so they do 5 things, and you got to do all 5. The first, chronologically, that happens is you set up a committee, and that's that group of people that aren't actually going to work with students. They're doing all of the behind-the-scenes work to make it sustainable and possible. So Young Life is not a church-specific thing. It is a city-wide thing, and so they don't expect that their funds will be coming from a church or churches. They expect that they'll have to do fundraising in order to pull this thing off, both because they know that they will need staff if it's at all successful, which so they know they'll need staff, and because they need supplies. In order to pull off really awesome stuff, you have to put some money in. So they, this group does fundraising and donor care and stuff like that. They run the social media aspect. They keep the story about Young Life Petaluma going so that we can always be reaching more students and more families who would then be recommending that their students come. Getting the name out there. They also will do the leadership development. A huge piece of Young Life culture is constant training, ongoing training for those leaders so that they have a place to talk about what they're experiencing, share camaraderie with each other, and get their skill sets continually developed. So there's 3 major teams inside of that committee. One is the community development team that is fostering relationships inside of the community, which includes keeping parents in the loop. Yay! And then there's the resource development team that is doing fundraising, tracking the budgets. There's a treasurer, things like that. And then there is the leadership development team who does, obviously, leadership development. But they also there's a whole position just for leadership appreciation, and there's a whole person for recruiting because we always want more people, because more people honestly translates to more students being connected, or the students that are connected having more adults to connect deeply with. So we always want recruitment to be happening. So that's chronologically, the first C that takes place is this committee getting formed. The next C that generally takes place is contact work. We get leaders trained, and then out there, a key element of Young Life is that they don't assume the students just randomly want to come to your church. But the first thing is likely somebody who loves them like God loves them is actually showing that by showing up at their things, showing up on their campus, investing in their friends. So how that actually usually takes place, is Young Life leaders get trained, obviously, and then they connect with students like your students who are already connected here, and they say, hey, could I show up at your next whatever band practice? Could I show up at your next mathlete event? Could I show up at your football game? And would you introduce me to your friends? I just want to start meeting people. And they just start making connections like that. So the contact work is a backbone of Young Life. The idea that the leaders show up for the students as opposed to asking the students to come where the leaders are all gathering. So that's the next C, is contact work. Didn't think about doing this chronologically. Contact work, committee. Okay, the next one is club. Once you get enough relationships going that you have critical mass, that's again, one of the things I like about them is that they really care about the social EQ. There's the kind of EQ that is between you and I in our interactions, but then there's such a thing as group EQ. And teens are some of the most complicated EQ on the planet. I don't have to tell you, you're a parent of a teen. So group dynamics with teens is super complicated, and these guys have this down to a science. What makes it safe for kids to be together? What makes them actually lower their guards? What makes them laugh and have a great time? How can you introduce them to other students so that all of a sudden it's not just this group of strangers, but how can a kid come in and feel seen, known, and loved? And yet when they need to stand on the side metaphorically and blend in, how can that be possible too? So they start club after they get enough relationships to where you can have critical mass at these things so that you've got the right social EQ dynamics happening. And club generally is a weekly thing. That the same leaders that were doing contact work are there. So they're not over there saying this is awesome thing called Young Life. You want to go to club. It happens next Tuesday night. I'm making that up. They say, hey, you should come with us. We're going to so-and-so's house. That's another key aspect of Young Life is they want neutral territory to meet at so that you're not saying, oh, it's at my church, which is a huge stumbling block for kids to come. Even if the event sounds awesome and they know other students that are going to be there, it's like, it's at your church. It's not, it's tough. That's tough. So it's this Young Life leader who they know from their friend who they love say, hey, you should come with us. We're going over to so-and-so's house on that night. And then they go to club. They have this incredible experience. And then they have that down. The icebreakers that they play, there's a whole variety of them, but they have measurements of what makes a good icebreaker based on what they know it takes to make the certain kind of dynamic that they want in the group. They have it down to a science, how they introduce worship, that they don't start with Jesus songs that no one knows. They start with songs that everybody else loves, and they belt it out, and they bounce, and they have apparently some old standards that, like, I just heard last night, like Lean on Me is an old standard that comes up all the time. They get their arms around each other's shoulders and they just belt it out. And that somewhere in there, after they've gained some momentum and some comfort, they might introduce a Jesus song, but it is just for the purposes of letting guards down, lowering guards. And when they introduce one of these Jesus songs, it's one of those that's super relatable and talks about the nature of who God is, but a lot about how he views us, who we are, and our identity. So, I mean, they have got it down to a strategic, what is our win? When we sing, what are we winning at and how would we know that we're winning? And then they have a faith talk at the end of that night that is 10 minutes. And it is a very relatable because it is based in the person, one of the people that invited them there, they're sharing a story out of their life and relating it to something that they see in the stories of Jesus or in things that Jesus had said. So chronologically, the next thing that happens is weekly club. And then the next thing that would happen would be summer camp. And this is Young Life's crown. What is that? Crowning achievement is not the right word. Who cares? This is oh no, now I'm stuck there. This is the thing that they are known for, even outside of Christian circles. They are phenomenal at camp. They have this thing down to an art, and it is fun. And we just got to interview some kids whose parents are involved with making Young Life Committee. They went to camp to check it out for the first time and came back, and I expect all students to have an incredible time at camp, and it's supposed to be the best week of their year. These students came back and juxtaposed it to many other camps that they had been to and talked about just freely from the heart. Oh my gosh, I would totally bring my friends. It is incredible. And yet it has awesome statistics about kids becoming Christians. So somehow they are walking that line between making it completely safe and completely comfortable to bring your non-Christian friends. And yet they have infused God into that in such a way that it is producing life change. So then chronologically, what comes out of that is after camp is usually when you would launch the thing they call campaigners, which is their discipleship component. This is where you get into littler groups of friendship groups with an adult leader who loves you dearly and is just walking out life with you in a more strategic way. And it's the follow-up, not the follow-up to camp, except for kids that make decisions, obviously you want to hook them up to a campaigners group so that they have somebody that they're partnering with as they start this journey. But in general, campaigners is a follow-up to the deep relationships that you started building shallowly, just superficially, at the various events that you were attending when you first started doing contact work. So it's kind of the culmination, as long as we're using C words, it's kind of the culmination where these relationships sink into something even deeper. So those are the 5 key elements that make up this approach. These are the tools that they use to reach Petula's youth as well as develop them. All right, you're welcome to post questions in these comments too.